Dear Media original podcast.
I was feeling this sense of, I don't know what will happen to me if I don't find other people, if I don't portray the truth of my interior world in the exterior. I had spent so much time hiding, so much time suppressing and dodging and only kind of speaking in these very small settings. So that night in bed, I just turned to my husband and I said, I think I'm gonna start something called Black Liturgies, and I'm gonna share prayers that connect spirituality with Blackness and Black emotion.
Cole Arthur Riley is familiar with being a solitary person with a rich interior life, a quiet person in a loud world. Books and the written language were her expression, outlet, and vehicle of communication. Cole became a student of religion and uses what she learns to offer comfort and belonging to others as a chaplain in training. And then, a collective and personal moment of anguish arises, and she realizes that the spaces she inhabits are unable to address the right trauma, to tend to the right wound, or to offer the specific healing needed. There's a silent scream within Black culture that this country has ignored. And Cole emerges as a uniquely equipped voice that fills the silence. I'm your executive producer, Tracy Ellis Ross, and this is I Am America, where we meet people who are redefining their own identity, the idea of community, and the possibility of our country. These stories are beautiful, heavy, and light, and they allow us to reimagine and reframe what we know about this country. Today's story is produced by showrunner Nicole Hill, and this is Cole Arthur Riley.
By early 2020, Cole had graduated college, met and married her husband, and moved to Ithaca, New York, where she worked as a chaplain in training at Cornell University. At her church there, she helped out by composing liturgies, or communal prayers, and occasionally, she led the congregation in reciting them together.
So liturgies across cultures, they usually include songs, they usually include poems, they usually include these fragments of cultural experience in a more organic form of prayer. Someone just kind of speaking from the heart. And I find it so beautiful, but with me, I'll just get tongue-tied and nervous in front of other people. And so being in a liturgical space, it just feels like restful and comfortable for me because you don't always have to have the words to say.
In March of 2020, COVID hit and life went virtual. Cole quarantined with her husband and kept going to work and church online. And then came May of 2020.
I was in bed when I saw the first 20 seconds of the video of George Floyd being murdered. I wish I hadn't watched it. I wish I could say that I clicked away and never scrolled back, but I did. A few hours later, I had started getting texts from people I know, saying if you need anything, let me know. And I had been having some health issues, and I had assumed they were talking about an appointment I had coming up. So I wasn't thinking much of it, but all at once it occurred to me that, there were people feeling guilty. And I remember feeling just this kind of loneliness of like, there's nothing anyone can say. There's nothing anyone can do. What, do you want to Venmo me for dinner? I don't care. A man just cried out for his mother.
Over the course of that week, Cole watched as the U.S. faced its largest racial justice movement since the 1960s. In every state in the country, people of all backgrounds took to the streets by the millions to protest police brutality and violence against Black people. And in response, Chicago, Atlanta, San Francisco, and at least 200 other cities imposed curfews, restricting the movement of 60 million Americans. 31 states and Washington, D.C. activated their National Guard and sent thousands of armed troops into city streets. And then came Sunday morning.
Church is virtual because of the pandemic, and I'm sitting in bed watching this church service. And this white woman comes on the screen to do the prayers of the people, where one person is able to voice the prayers of the community. And I just see it in her face before she even says anything at all, that this isn't going to be for me. She starts praying something along the lines of, for those of us who haven't realized until now, there was other language around white people giving a voice and like white people speaking up. And I took problem with that. I don't think anyone is voiceless. I think people are silenced. But also it's completely centering the people who are just showing up now because they feel guilty. And I just thought, prayers for the people. Like, who are the people? It's not me. These prayers aren't me. And I didn't feel like I needed to confess. I felt like I deserved an apology. I felt like, where is it where I can name my anger, what I think is a holy discontent? And it was really painful. I felt the kind of immeasurable distance of, I don't think this liturgy can really meet what I need. And I just close my laptop and curl back into the covers.
Cole had seen her church and the larger Christian community fail to find the words to respond to moments like these before, and it hurt then too. In the past, she felt unsure of how to articulate what she was feeling, and so instead she chose to hold it in. But this time she couldn't.
I was feeling this sense of, I don't know what will happen to me if I don't find other people, if I don't portray the truth of my interior world in the exterior. I had spent so much time hiding, so much time suppressing and dodging and only kind of speaking in these very small settings. And I felt this overwhelming desperation, like it's time to find the truth of you and let that be who is presented to the outside world. That night in bed, I just turned to my husband and I said, I think I'm gonna start something called Black Liturgies, and I'm gonna share prayers that connect spirituality with embodiment and Blackness and Black emotion, and create a liturgy that honors Black cultural moments and Black cultural artifacts and Black art and Black literature.
So she created an Instagram account and named it Black Liturgies.
And then I wrote the first poem I posted on the Black Liturgies account that night. Ours is a Black liturgy, all power and glory and light. We are not the darkness. We are well acquainted with the dark, bear its marks, know its ways in you. We are not the darkness. We can camouflage in yours. Watch now where we point. Listen to where we say it is. Black bones know we are keepers of the light.
After she wrote the poem, Cole had to decide how to sign it. Not many people even knew she wrote poetry, and on top of that, Cole is Black and queer and has been privately developing a spiritual ideology grounded in those identities. But she wasn't ready to share that with everyone in her life.
I was looking for kind of a safety in anonymity, and so I decided not to tell anyone besides my partner. I didn't tell my sister, I didn't tell my closest friends. I just decided to keep it to myself and then I'll start posting. So I maybe followed 100 accounts that first day. People that I thought I could draw creative inspiration from. And the next morning I woke up and I think I had over 100 followers. And I was like, I didn't know if it was normal or not. I didn't really know what to think about it at first.
By the end of that first week, 100 followers had turned into 1,000.
Black women with platforms already and trusted Black voices were so generous with their platforms and sharing my words. And it felt so good to have my writing affirmed by Black people, by my Black community. Writers and poets followed me, people that I have admired for years, and they just support me and appreciate my writing, which is beautiful. So I'm finding an unexpected sense of belonging with other artists. And it's a lot easier to speak around artists because they're not concerned with you getting the precise words right. They want to feel something.
By the following week, her anonymous poems and prayers are attracting people young and old, celebrities, activists, community leaders, Christians, and non-religious types alike. With the encouragement of other artists and the safety of anonymity, Cole is finally able to share her ideology.
I was quoting and relying heavily on Black queer thinkers like Audre Lorde and James Baldwin, and I'm always trying to practice queering the text a bit and seeing something that other people have approached in one very normative way for many years, and looking at it either from a completely different character on the page that you haven't considered, or just from a different angle. And I'd begun posting a lot about the Black body, a lot about trauma in the body, but also a lot about the beauty and the inherent dignity in the Black body, and receiving a lot of good feedback, a lot of kind of camaraderie.
And a lot of questions.
Who are you? Where did you go to school? And a lot of people actually thought I was a man. And so they would address me as he, or address my work as he, or call me bro. So yeah, there were a lot of who are you questions, and I would find ways to kind of dodge them without giving my name or giving too much information. And then I started to notice a few of my friends were following Black Liturgies, and they would sometimes even send me texts of posts, and I'm like, this is not happening. I don't even know what to do here. I was terrified. There's something so exposing, so raw about thinking that you are the person who could ever articulate something, an emotion so complicated and so nuanced, or an experience so complicated and nuanced. And that, I think I've heard someone say this before, that writing in general requires a kind of arrogance. You have to believe that your words are worth reading. It takes a lot of arrogance, of confidence, and sacred arrogance, I think. And I've struggled with that.
A goal I made for myself this year was to experiment more with my look, starting with my accessories. So I was already in the market for a new pair of eyeglasses when I discovered Pair Eyewear. During my annual eye checkup, I told my doctor that at the end of the day, I was feeling so tired I could hardly keep my eyes open. She told me about eye fatigue and that all my time on computers and screens could be contributing to my eyes feeling exhausted at the end of the day. So I decided to look for some blue light glasses on Pair Eyewear's website, and I found these lovely tortoiseshell ones that I am wearing right now. They had so many different styles. Their website was really easy to use. They have magnetic top frames that start at only $25. At that price, you can really build a collection that's unique to you and your style. And their budget-friendly base frames start at just $60, including prescription. Another thing I love about Pair is that they know vision is essential. So for every pair you buy, Pair provides glasses to a child in need. So get glasses that stay as fresh as your unique style with Pair. Go to paireyewear.com/America for 15% off your first purchase. That's Pair, Pair, eyewear.com/America. Cole grew up in the early 2000s in Pittsburgh, where she and her older sister were raised by her father, her stepmother, and her grandmother.
My grandma, she used to say, we Arthurs, she used to say, we are nothing if not sound. So I'm from this very loud and charismatic and funny, so funny family. I'll watch these family videos where, everyone's like on the couches on top of each other, laughing, giggling, and then the camera just pans to 5-year-old Cole staring longingly out of a window, and the mood just shifts. I was the child who was in the closet reading Goosebumps books while everyone else was having fun in the kitchen. I was just very solitary and very restrained, and I actually had an anxiety disorder called selective mutism, which it's not all that uncommon in children. It feels like you have things that you could say, you have often a rich interior world, a rich interior dialogue, but you're not able to translate that into verbal communication. So many people, it's not the same for everyone, but many people feel really trapped inside the actual performance of speech, even though there are words inside them. So, when I was really young, it felt like I was unable to speak. No, I don't think kids always understand that they're different. I did. I always compared myself to people who were really charismatic and charming kids and kind of could speak what they wanted to say in the moment. And I thought that there was something kind of broken in me, because I just couldn't get out the words as quickly as I needed them to. So I'm not from a incredibly literary home. Like my dad, he wasn't a reader, he's not a writer, he would never claim to be. But I think he knew, this little girl's gonna need some kind of tool for expression. So he would have us, my sister and I, write poems or little stories. Sometimes it's competition with each other. He'd give us a word or a color, and we'd have 10 minutes to write a poem. Or if we wanted to get out of chores, we could opt to write a short story or to journal. And what's funny is, my sister, she wasn't looking for this tool of expression. She was very charismatic, very verbal, very articulate as a child. But my dad wanted to bring the family together through it so that I didn't continue to feel isolated and my distinctive way of communicating. This is an original. Also, look at my handwriting when I was 9 years old.
Look at that. They don't even teach kids
cursive anymore. Looking back, I was like, was I a handwriting prodigy? Kids don't write like this anymore, I'll tell you what.
Definitely don't.
This is called Magic Potion, written in 1999. Hi, my name is Nicole Arthur, and I'm going to tell you how I turned into a grown-up for one whole day. So sit back, relax, and get ready for the whole story. Once on a Saturday night, I had a dream that I went to a fortune teller, and she turned me into an adult for a day by giving me melted chocolate, a glass of milk, and a magic black lollipop. Sorry. When I realized my dad's face, when he'd linger over a poem, or there were a few times I would find things I'd written on his desk weeks or even months later, and I would think, I wonder, do I have something? This is important. This is important enough that he wanted to save it.
Cole starts writing all the time, even without her dad's challenges. She still finds it hard to communicate verbally, but her collection of writings steadily grows. Then, near the end of middle school,
my sister and I, we were playing Monopoly, and we were putting away the game underneath the couch, and I noticed this book. It was special because we didn't have many books in our house growing up. We just weren't that kind of household, and so anytime I saw a book, I would just kind of pause. And it was so beautiful. It was this navy hardcover with silver embossed lettering. And so I pick it up and I open it, and it says my grandma's name, Phyllis Arthur, and it was a poem that she had written. And I remember shoving it to my sister and saying, is this grandma? Is this real? Did you know? And my sister kind of shrugged. But to me, it felt like a miracle. I felt so much distance in some aspects of my family because I wasn't very verbal and I was often trapped in books. And something about just picking up a book that my grandmother had contributed to made me feel this closeness to her, like I wasn't floating in thin air, but there was this tether now, that's something that tethered me to her in a really meaningful way. I realized maybe you could do this, those little things you're writing here. What if you could hold them? Like, I knew books existed, but I never even asked the question of like who wrote them. I just kind of knew inside that's whoever it is, it's not us. And so I wasn't concerned with it. But when I saw that day, everything changed.
She hides the book under her bed and takes it out periodically to stare at it. She doesn't tell anyone that she found it, but the discovery does influence the way she starts to think about her future, as evidenced by the end of one of her stories.
Last but not least, I wish to become a wonderful writer. And I don't even have to get my writings published. All I want is to be truly complimented. Thank you very much for listening to a couple of my wildest dreams.
Cole writes her way through middle school and high school, and then she goes to the University of Pittsburgh, where she majors in physics.
Math and science require very little answers. You can just raise your hands and say like a number as opposed to like explaining why Hamlet matters.
But she promises herself that if anyone told her she could make it as an English major, she'd switch. In her junior year, a professor noticed how much time she'd spent in the English department and asked if she was sure about her major. By the end of the week, she switched.
I was in these classes for the first time where I was reading people like Toni Morrison and Alice Walker and Richard Wright and James Baldwin. Like, I had never read a Toni Morrison book before college, which is just kind of unfathomable. And I don't even think this is bias. I think this is objective. Like, the great writers that will be remembered hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years from now, I think are Black people. So I was having this kind of awakening in the classroom, but then that was also the first time I started to intentionally go to church. I wasn't raised in an overtly religious home, but in college I began going to a church, and that was the first time I was ever receiving any kind of Christian education. Those church spaces, I should say, were white-dominated and very evangelical, and I think years of feeling this lack of belonging caught up to me. And so when I encountered a space that was promising, a room full of people who were saying, like, you can be strange and you're welcome here, I really kind of fled to that. And I think the interesting thing about it is I couldn't separate what I was reading in Toni Morrison from what I was reading in Isaiah, because it was all this kind of one big new thing. In a lot of Black literature, there's some element either of an actual church setting or church service or just the spiritual. There's a real sense of mysticism in a lot of great Black literature that I'm drawn to. So my Christian belief system has always been haunted. I say haunted in a beautiful way, like good haunting, ancestral haunting, I hope, by Black literature and voices from the grave who were telling me there's another way to imagine convening with the divine.
For the next few years, Cole's connection to her spirituality deepens, along with her connection to her church. She was finally a part of a community, and not just watching one from the sidelines. But she knows that their relationship with Blackness and beliefs about queerness did not line up with her own. Every day she continues to write and read Black authors and religious texts and explore her spirituality, and she discovers that she believes in centering Black stories and queer perspectives and the voices of those who'd been historically ignored. Outwardly, though, she does what she feels she has to maintain the community she'd finally found.
It's true. I changed the way I spoke. The kinds of things I watched. I changed the cadence of my voice to sound peppy and whatnot, and I lost a lot of my blackness. And all the while, I know I'm queer. I know I'm queer. I've known it in many ways queer, but like sexually queer as well. But knew that my belonging would be at stake if I were ever to explain what I was feeling or who I was attracted to. And I'm married to a man, so I'm operating with a degree of heteronormative privilege that many queer people don't have. And so I was always kind of wary of that, my place in the world. But I never wanted anyone to misconstrue me marrying a man to think that I was among those who theologically disagreed with queerness. So I'd made this vow that if someone assumed that I was straight, I would correct them. And that would be kind of how I gradually came out.
And Cole was privately working to repair her relationship with her Blackness.
It was so difficult, I was undoing a lot of self-hatred and disgust that was planted in me from the time I was in middle school, elementary school. I feel like I was undoing that. And I had a handful of Black women in my life who I felt were on similar journeys, if not further down the road than me, that I was looking to for, I wouldn't say comfort, but kind of like the okay, like it's okay, this journey that you're on, that you still wake up and sometimes don't like yourself because of how relentless anti-Blackness and misogyny is in the world, how relentless the patriarchy is. They were affirming to me that it's not my fault, that the self-hatred that I'm undoing, that I shouldn't undo it under the influence of more self-hatred of, thinking just be Black and proud, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud, and you want to, you really do. But I had women who were telling me, it's okay that you're not immediately there. That's not actually how it works. It's more of a proclamation of hope, of sometimes you have to say the thing before you believe it, and sometimes the words themselves are what get you there. And I was practicing a lot of that, now in the company of white people. And I don't think I was always practicing that. I was keeping to myself. I was holding my journey pretty close around white Christians specifically. And I was feeling really confined, really trapped, but was really quiet about it all.
Until the summer of 2020, when the murder of George Floyd and the protests and outpouring of grief and pain that followed made it too difficult to stay quiet. She started Black Liturgies, and her experiences as a Christian and as a Black queer writer intersected in the form of prayers and poems and meditations and quotes that were connecting with people by the thousands. And Cole was shocked and proud, but had been hiding her name and face from this community that wanted her as a member and not just as their anonymous curator. So, after having the page up for 3 weeks, Cole makes a decision. She's ready to reveal the identity of the Black liturgist.
Hi, I'm Tracy Ellis Ross. It was a long road to understanding and loving my natural hair. I created Pattern Beauty for all of us to unleash our best curls in our own bathrooms. From wash day to styling and everything in between, Pattern promises to keep your curls, coils, and tight textures juicy and joyful. Give us a try and get 15% off now with the code podcast15 on patternbeauty.com. Here's to loving our hair.
I don't take many selfies. I'm trying to learn the skills, but they don't come naturally to me. So I was trying to take these selfies. I found one and posted it, and I stayed outside for a little bit, walking the perimeter of my house and trying to tap into something bigger than myself on a day when everything felt so narrowed in on me.
Cole posts her selfie, along with a message to the Black Liturgies community.
I began curating this space 3 weeks ago, hoping that I would find some measure of healing and health in sharing my writing and Black words that have formed me. I wasn't planning on sharing anything about who I am. As the days have gone on, many of you have asked, who are you? Who is the Black liturgist? As time has passed, I've realized that I no longer want my words divorced from my body and selfhood. So as 5,000 of you are now following along, I thought I'd introduce myself. My name is Cole Arthur Riley. I'm a 29-year-old Black woman living in New York. My grandmother is a writer and the queen matriarch of my resilient, mischievous, and very loud family. My father encouraged me to write from an early age, poems for ice cream, stories to get out of chores. My sister is my favorite person in the world. My husband is gentle and curious and tells the truth. Thank you for encouraging me and supporting this space. I plan to continue it for as long as it is healing and healthy for me. This is a comment that my grandma made, actually, after I revealed myself. I had told her about a week earlier, and so she had been following, but this was the first time she commented, and she said, "My angel, I hoped you would announce yourself. It is so important that things of value have a face that confirms their reality. It is good to share an idea, but it is so much better when that idea has a face that looks like ours. You are my granddaughter, and in so many ways, my spirit."
After that, the comments and DMs pour in.
It was just like this wave of Black women supporting me, naming my beauty, naming how grateful they are to that I was letting them in. And I think that's when real community started to form, like real relationships started to form, was after that point.
Then during Pride Month, Cole shares the following.
As a Christian, I have been complicit in a system that has terrorized the bodies and spirits of queer people, historically and presently. We can name this. It's not betrayal, it's a reclaiming. The past few years, I made a vow that whenever someone presumed me to be straight, I would correct them and tell them I'm queer. Being married to a man, I was hesitant to center myself publicly, because the reality is existing in a hetero-passing marriage does afford me distinct privileges. But I don't want this part of me to only be held as a correction. I deserve more than that. So here is your notice that you are being led in prayer by my queerness just as much as my Blackness. I hope that is holy and okay with you, but if it's not, I'm still holy and okay. That was hands down the most DMs I ever received because of a post, and something about that is beautiful, and something about that was just breaking my heart because I knew there was a reason why they couldn't show up in the comment section. I never deleted a single message from that day. I still go back and read them.
Some in Cole's community question the theology that she shares on Black liturgies. Others flat out disagree. But Cole is sure of what she believes, and she trusts her voice. Offline, she starts attending a new non-traditional church led by a Black woman, where she's able to, as she puts it, breathe and move freely. Online, she keeps writing, and Black Liturgies continues to grow from 5,000 to 50,000 to 150,000 followers and counting. Eventually, her online community connects Cole with a publisher. She writes her first novel, which she titles This Here Flesh, and in February of 2022, she becomes a New York Times best-selling author.
My dad could not be prouder. He goes through and reads the reviews of my book to different family members. He just chooses a family member, and then he'll just call them and say, "Let me read you a few reviews on Goodreads." So he is very much so a dad and very much so proud. And the book, it is part spiritual contemplation, but it's also grounded in the stories of 3 generations in my family: myself, my grandma, and my father. I'm really proud of it. Writing is one of those strange things where all you have to do is write and then name yourself a writer. And the trouble is, many people are writing, and not many of us have the courage to name ourselves for a million different reasons, a million different insecurities. And it feels really affirming to let myself be an author and a writer and be in a season of like naming myself unapologetically, not because I published a book, but because I know who I am. I'm Cole Arthur Riley. I'm a writer, a mystic, a wife, a sister, a daughter, and a granddaughter.
Well, Cole found her voice, and thank God she did, because I know I needed it, and I wasn't alone in that need. So much was happening in 2020. After the murder of George Floyd, all I wanted to do was look into people's eyes, hold hands, and be in the Black community. There was so much healing to be done. But remember, there was no vaccine, no COVID testing. We were stuck in our homes or asked to be 6 feet apart. There was no safe way to connect. Within all of that, Black Liturgies emerged, an anonymous Instagram page that was intimately naming what so many of us were feeling, offering a space of inclusion and prayer to answer the specific hurt that so many in my community were feeling. 3 weeks after the page was created, the author revealed themselves to be Cole Arthur Riley, a soft-spoken chaplain in training who would use her voice and platform to name Black bones as the keepers of the light. After years of an uncomfortable sense of belonging in traditional sanctuaries, Cole is unable to accept the crumbs of comfort being offered to her. Cole finds that spaces centered in whiteness cannot heal this trauma. She will not discover the dignity and beauty of her Blackness there. Defying hundreds of years of trauma, defying the disregard for our humanity, defying the violent brutality to our bodies, Cole begins to center Blackness as the narrator of her own story. Cole Arthur Riley is, in her own words, a queer Black woman. In America, loving your Blackness is sometimes a proclamation of hope. Choosing to honor your womanhood can be a powerful defiance. And speaking your queerness when it might be easier to assimilate can be brave and dangerous. As Cole reveals herself to be the Black liturgist, she sheds light into the different parts of her own identity, an identity that makes her whole and holy. How do we acknowledge our silent screams and give relief to the pain? How do we heal within all the noise? How do we find each other, hold each other? How do we create community? How do we see and respect each other's wholeness? Maybe there's more than one answer and more than one way of being whole and holy. I'm Tracy Ellis Ross, and I hope you enjoyed meeting Cole Arthur Riley as much as I did.
I'm America is a co-production of Dear Media and Joy Mill Entertainment. Executive producer, creator, and co-writer is Tracy Ellis Ross. Executive producer, showrunner, and writer is me, Nicole Hill. Executive producer and co-writer is Adriana Embries on behalf of Joy Mill Entertainment. Managing producer is Asil Kabit on behalf of Dear Media. Sound design and engineering by Mitra Kaboli. Our theme song, Strum, is composed by Jesse Montgomery. Story editing is by Martina Abrams-Ilunga. Reporting and fact-checking by Siona Petros. Production assistance by Daniel Gonzalez. Executive producers are Brian Dobbins on behalf of Artists First, Jeff Berman and Brett Boutier on behalf of Magnet Companies, and Jocelyn Falk, Paige Port, and Michael Bostic on behalf of Dear Media.